Hey guys, this video is going to show you how to set up the responsive widths plugin within DatoCMS. So I've got an example project in DatoCMS here. I've already installed the responsive widths plugin. Now let's go ahead and actually set it up so we can use it properly within a grid and column layout. So in our settings, ideally what we want is a block or a model. It doesn't really matter which one. And I'm going to add a new block called tutorial grid. I'm going to save this model. And I'm going to add another block called tutorial column. I'm going to save this model, and within the tutorial column I want to add a new field. I want to select the JSON field. Now this field is going to control the widths at different breakpoints for this column. So for example, if we wanted a 50% width at tablet screens and a 100% width at mobile screens, this is where we're going to set up using the responsive widths. So let's call this field widths, and we want to go to the presentation tab and we want to select the responsive widths. So let's hit save field. Now within this column, we'd also probably have something like either modular content, structured text, or rich text, or something like that with our actual content for this column. However, I'm not going to add that because we don't really need to use that in this tutorial. So I'm just going to stick with widths here for each column. Now in our tutorial grid, let's add a new field, and it's going to be modular content, and it's going to be called columns. Validation, let's select the tutorial column block. So we only want to be able to render tutorial columns, and let's hit save field. Then in the models, I'm just going to add a new model called tutorial responsive widths, save model, and it should be a singular, so tutorial responsive width then. So hit save model, and in the tutorial responsive width, let's add a new field, modular content, let's call it tutorial grid. Now I'm just prefixing all of these models and blocks and things with tutorial. Obviously you probably just want to call it grid and grid column, but I'm prefixing it with tutorial for the sake of this tutorial so it doesn't conflict with anything else I have in this project. So I'm just going to hit save field for the tutorial grid. And actually I need to add some validation. So in the validations tab, we only want to be able to render the grid, so the tutorial grid blocks for this modular content field. So now let's go ahead and go to our content. Let's go to tutorial responsive width. Let's create a new record. Let's add a new grid. Let's add a new column. And let's say large screens for this column, we want it to be 25%. So we're going to assume there's going to be 4 columns in this grid we're creating here. So we're going to have this particular column is going to be 25% width. Then we want it to be 50% width for medium screens. And for small screens, we want it to span the entire width. Let's add a new column, and we can see that the previous columns are already specified and with their respective widths. So for large screens, for this second column, we can see the little icon down here that it's going to be roughly positioned in this position for large screens. We want it to be 50% medium and 100% for small screens. And you can see that it's wrapped down to a new line here because these are both 100% widths. Let's add a new column. And actually, let's add 3 columns for this grid. So for the third column, let's give it a 50% width. So we can see this is now 50% width for this row. Let's go 100% for the medium screens and 100% for small screens. And if you wanted to hide a column, you could just leave the value as blank or enter 0, which means then this column will be hidden for that particular view. So obviously you need to create this logic yourself in your own front end. This is only exposing values large, medium, and small. So if we hit save on this, and check out our API Explorer, and let's go to the Explorer. We want to select tutorial responsive width. We want to select the tutorial grid, and we want to select the columns for each grid, and then we want to select the widths. So let's hit play on this, and there we go. We can see our 3 columns for this particular grid. So the first column will have 25% width on a large screen, 50% on medium screen, and 100% width on small screen. Exactly the same for the second column and the third column, 50% large, 100% medium, and 100% small. So you can use these values, however you need to construct your logic on your own front end. So all this plugin is doing is exposing these widths so you can create the logic yourself to create your columns on your own front end.